All right, welcome in. This is the first time going live, and so I've never used the software before. I'm trying some things with these cultural breakdown videos, and this is the first time going live. The first two times that I did a pre-record, I had to redo them, and so as young and pro-tech as you would think I am, that's not really the case with some of these things. An old dog learning new tricks, as you can see, kind of on the fly here, but I'm excited to try and do this live, try and make this weekly show, 8:30 Central Time on Thursday nights, and talk about the culture, talk about things going on. As we talked about in the first couple of weeks, sometimes it's going to be a major story. Unfortunately, this week's major story broke about 2 hours ago with the conviction of former President Trump. I'm not sure I would have talked about that anyway, but there certainly was not enough time to put something together, and so we're going to go a little bigger picture this time with the generational shift. Things are changing, rapidly changing, especially in the last 4 years since the COVID shutdowns and everything we went through in 2020. And so that being the case, you've seen the world change, you've seen people's values change, you've seen people's habits and just ways they approach life change. A lot of people rethinking, have we been doing things the right way, and can we do things a better way? And so that brings us to where we are today with some of these generational shifts that I want to talk about tonight. With number one, we're going to talk about some specifics, homesteading, as you see on the title there, localism, things like that, and a few others. Then we're going to talk about some religious specifics, things where that has kind of brought into the church and ways we interpret the Bible. And then more broadly, the place of tradition, the place of things passed down, the place of re-examining things and asking questions and things like that. And so let's get into it here with some of the specifics I mentioned. Homesteading is one of them. Just this idea of keeping chickens, keeping goats, keeping cows, livestock of some kind, gardening, and going back to cultivating the land and things like that. You see a Business Insider, as I'm going to, with each of these, kind of give headlines and news stories that back up the trends that are happening. And this one is millennials giving up city life to start homesteading. People that want land, people that will give up the downtown lifestyle, the going out and restaurants and kind of the stuff that young people really are usually into, or younger people, I guess, wanting to get out to the country, maybe taking a smaller house to get land and things like that. And it's a trend that has really grown, getting away from the movement towards suburbia, the small backyards and subdivisions where you live next door to somebody and there's just a row of houses, 800 long, just those suburban streets that were so popular for so long. And the funny thing with each of these that we're going to go over is there's very much a pendulum effect. Some people are running in one direction, others are running in the other. And there's the return to the cities. There's people trying to go with the urban lifestyle and the apartments and the high-rises and things like that. It is considered a luxury item, of a luxury lifestyle. And some people are saying, that's what I want and what I'm going to pursue. And others are saying, don't give me that. Give me homesteading. Give me, dirt. Give me, as I said before, livestock and keeping the land and things like that. And so, not really commenting on right or wrong. It's just an interesting shift for people to say, yeah, the suburban lifestyle that we had is not good enough anymore, and I'm going to go either this direction or this direction, but I don't want the house and the small yard and all those things that my parents and maybe even grandparents had before me. I'm rejecting that and going a different direction. I think there is some good in that, but we'll get to that a little bit later. One of the big ones for the millennials and Gen Z is experiences, not things. I think it was the boomers, maybe Gen X, that kind of originated that bumper sticker that says, "He who dies with the most toys wins," which is a very unfortunate view for those that do have that. But really it was the compilation of toys, of boats and jet skis and campers and motorcycles and stuff. Stuff became cheaper. That lifestyle became more affordable. And you look back at the lifestyle pre-60s, pre-50s, and so on. There was just not stuff everywhere. There was not cheap goods. There was not Walmart. There was not Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's and things like that. You had things that had a use, and that was about it. But you didn't collect stuff. Well, now you look at the just the storage industry alone. How much stuff we have that we pay to put somewhere because we're not using it, it's not prominently displayed in our houses, but we still want the stuff. Well, the younger generations are saying, no, I'm going to run the other direction from that. Nothing matters. I don't really need anything. A lot of people do as best they can to live out of a backpack, the minimalist lifestyle, the tiny house lifestyle, living out of camper or a converted van and things like that have become popular. Again, it's just a view on materialism. It's a view on how to spend your money, on what you're here for, I guess, is one of the big things, is what is your purpose in life? And for some people, it was just surrounding yourself with stuff, with things you enjoy having. For others, and both kind of look at the other as what a waste of time. I don't know that either one is right. There can be selfishness in both of these things, but the younger generation looks and thinks, man, all this stuff is stupid. I want experiences. I want to travel. I want pictures from around the world and sporting events, concerts, things like that, which are a lot of fun. But then older people might look at that and go, well, that's stupid. You're always just throwing your money on things where you spend it all and it's over in one night. That concert might have cost you $300 and now it's over. Now what do you have to show for it? And so there's that generational back and forth. Again, both can be a little materialistic in some ways, but in others, it's not right or wrong. It is a shift, though. It's a change. That term, of course, we have to coin a funny term for everything, knownership. Millennials value experiences over owning things. A Forbes article detailed that it just doesn't matter to have the stockpiling of stuff quite as much. Another one, and I think this is a good one, is healthier natural eating. We had the rise of fast food. We had the rise of restaurants. We had the rise of processed food and really a lot of advice that has turned out to be really bad. Get away from butter and replace it with margarine. Get away from olive oil and coconut oil and replace it with canola oil and things like that more and more research is saying, well, this is terrible. But for convenience sake, I mean, pick up a package. Everything in the store has stuff in it that is now more and more being discovered to be really bad for you. And so there is a shift away from that to say, not only is this bad, but this matters. I think there's a lot of people that weren't saying, well, I want to be unhealthy. I think they were saying, this doesn't matter that much. We just eat and that makes up your life. And the shift away from that is to say, no, this really does matter. I put Deep Nutrition on there because there's a million of these books about traditional eating. That's the one I've read. It's very lengthy, but very interesting about basically humans across the world have had certain staples of their diet in some form or another for as long back as we can record, and only in the last 100 years did we get away from that. And we're seeing the results of that, all the disease, the heart disease, and other negative health effects. And her point is, and it's really amazing at how much it affects that she details in that book. But as I said, there are other books, other YouTube videos, channels, podcasts, blogs. I mean, there's tons of information out there, but the big shift is to say this really matters. At the same time, there's a shift that is going even more all in with the takeout, fast food, DoorDash, Uber Eats. Another thing that was kind of launched by 2020 is staying in and having someone bring your food. Well, when that's the case, it's not going to be healthy for you. And so you're seeing that split once again in rejection of the way things used to be. Maybe mom cooked the meal at home. Now it's, well, I don't want that. I want it fast. I want it now or whatever. Versus, well, maybe mom cooked it at home, but I don't like the way she made it or the ingredients she used. I'm going to use healthy, natural, what have you. And so I hope you're kind of picking up on what I'm really getting at here, which is the place of tradition. Tradition is being rejected, but with a lot of these things, it's tradition that's not very old. It's tradition that rejected the tradition before it. And so those that are trying to go past what we've done in previous generations are going back to older tradition, maybe rejection of tradition that rejected the tradition above it, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, but localism is another. And there's a bunch of these that I could enter. There's a bunch of these that we could talk about. Things like homeschooling. We talked about homesteading, but homeschool has grown leaps and bounds in the last 5 years. You could look at technology, and there are some that, I mean, you can't go to the grocery store without seeing carts with the kids in there and their face in the iPad or mom's phone just keeping them happy. And then other people who are going to wear like no screens at all because we've got to get away from this. And so again, that divide that's starting to happen. Localism is another. We've got kind of this rootlessness where you don't, people went to college, got a job across the country, and maybe your siblings live in multiple different states, and your parents live in a different state, and you see each other at Thanksgiving or Christmas. I am one of many people I know who in the last 3 or 4 years moved to be closer to family, moved to be where maybe it was that way before, and now I and family members all live a lot closer together because of putting your roots down somewhere. And I hope to raise my kids here. I hope, especially my sons, who might have more say in it as where they choose a job and to plant their roots. I hope they're here. I hope they are members of this community for generations to come, because it's just a different perspective that, again, for the longest time, people grew up and died and lived and died within 10 miles of maybe where they were born. That really isn't the case anymore, but you're starting to see it come back. And again, you've got this Miami Herbert Business School research that was talking about since COVID, people are spending their money locally on small businesses, farmers markets, not going with the big box stores as much, because we're seeing that it matters to have those people around you. And so again, it's a shift away from what was being done, but back to an older tradition of what was before. I say all that to get us to the church, to get us to things that maybe matter a little bit more, things like gender roles. This one is very interesting. If you follow our work at Focus Press, Think Deeper podcast, Godly Young Men, so many things we do, we focus a lot on masculinity and femininity and the importance of getting those things right, because God has prescribed what we're supposed to do, because God has given us instruction on these things. And as I said before, those homesteading, localism, all of the things we just discussed right there, healthy nutrition, you can root a lot of this in Genesis 1 through 3. You can root a lot of this in God made man, told them to cultivate the garden and be fruitful and multiply, and man and woman, and all of the things that happen there. And so I think some of these are really getting back to our human roots, and gender roles are one of those things. Interestingly, there's the way that it has been done in the last 70 or 80 years. There's one route that is breaking off from that, and there's another route that's breaking off from that. Again, with all of these things, there's kind of the, for lack of a better term, the boomer Gen X way of doing it, and then there are two rapidly diverging ways for Gen Z and millennials to do it. This is a great article I'm going to recommend from Aaron Renn, a political, cultural, religious commentator I really enjoy reading. You can check this out on aaronrenn.com, but he wrote on complementarianism and how, and that's been the church, Christianity's main view on men and women for the last 70 or 80 years, and how the title of the article was Complementarianism is a Baby Boomer Theology that will die with the baby boomers. And essentially he writes that it was brought to where men and women are basically the same and equal rights, equal lifestyles in every single way, except men are the head of the household. Men are the head of the church. Outside of that, in society and in just all kinds of different ways, there's not that much to it. They're supposed to be functionally about the same, and then women are supposed to take the back seat in those ways. What he argues in the article is that lasted for 30 or 40 years, and it's just not going to last anymore. And you're seeing it not last anymore, as we're going to get to here in a minute. But I wanted to read this excerpt here where Renn said, "First, complementarianism will die. Again, like the Episcopal Church, that doesn't mean it will go totally extinct anytime soon, but the life force has gone out of it, and it's already starting to fade." You're just seeing that it doesn't have any history, it doesn't have any deep roots, doesn't have any deep biblical roots, cultural roots, anything like that. It was kind of a compromise position where feminism was pushing really hard in one direction, but the guys who were studying this and came to complementarianism felt that push, but didn't want to give up the farm, and so they kind of compromised on the middle ground here and said, well, this is how it works. But nobody likes middle ground. There's always going to be that push and pull in one direction or the other. And so that's what you're seeing is Gen Z, in large part, is getting away from that. This was some shocking stuff from Vox Media. It said 44% of Gen Z believe gender is not a binary, compared to 34% who say gender is binary. Again, not comforting to hear that of today's up-and-comers. It says, for example, 6 in 10 Gen Zers feel that using makeup or wearing dresses is okay for both men and women. That's wild. And so again, that is a rejection of the complementarian world that boomers built in Christianity and kind of outside of it. But it's also a rejection of everything that came before. Whereas you're also seeing the rise of very strong masculinity, the rise of very strong femininity, not feminism, but femininity, biblically, traditional husband-wife roles, traditional mother-father roles, male leadership in the church, society, that people are advocating that more and more vocally and openly and really unashamedly in contrast to this. And you're seeing a lot of Gen Z, especially young men, but some of the girls are coming around to it, saying, yeah, I want to be a man. It's good to be a man. I shouldn't be ashamed of that. There is a distinction. I'm not going to wear a dress and put on makeup. That's just not something I'm going to do. And really, going back to older traditionalism, the way it kind of always was until the last 70 or 80 years, and a rejection of what has come before. And so going on from there, you naturally follows the biblical marriage and sexuality are something that is undergoing a shift. And with all of these, there's the way it's been done. Then there are two different directions it's going. The way it's been done has been a lessening importance on marriage. This was the last 70 or 80 years was the era of no-fault divorce. Super high divorce rates. I don't think the 50% that you would always hear is entirely accurate, but it was way too high. It was something way too acceptable, even within the church. And divorce and remarriage has been debated for so long, and you can only do that for so long before the next generation goes, well, why even start? Why sign that paper? Why tie my financial life up to another person when it can just end at any minute? Why make that commitment? So a lot of people didn't. And so you see stats like this, a record high share of 40-year-olds have never been married. 25% of them, 1 out of 4 people in the United States who are 40 years old haven't been married. That is unbelievable for any society. When marriage is the life path for the large majority of people, that you can get people a whole almost 2 generations into this mindset where you get 25% of 40-year-olds had never been married in 2021. It's crazy. It really is hard to fathom how we got to such a place. And so that is the one direction you're seeing, is people saying marriage doesn't matter. Some of those people probably wanted to be married and it didn't work out or whatever happened. And of course, that is always an unfortunate situation, and you hate when that happens for them. But there are a lot of people who are saying, I don't want to be married. I don't want to be tied down. I want, again, the experiences. I want to travel. I want my own life. I don't want to give that to somebody else. And, of course, with that follows, these people are not, in many cases, committing to chastity until marriage. If they've decided, I'm just going to go have experiences and have fun, the sexual temptation part of it becomes very real for the large majority of these people, and so it's a really big issue. On the other side, you're seeing polyamory coming in. So some people won't get married. Some people say, well, I'll just have multiple partners. 1 out of 22 people, 4 to 5% of Americans who are currently in a romantic relationship identify as part of a consensually non-monogamous relationship, where you can go see somebody else on the side. I mean, that's horrible. That is so destructive to a person, to a couple, to everybody involved, really. 1 in 22. And so you see this shift in that direction and how dangerous and deadly that is. But you also see the kind of low regard that marriage has been held in, even in the church for so long. The jokes and the ball and chain and the nagging wife, or the wife who's smarter than the husband and he's just the big kid, that she's got to, just another kid he's got to raise or she's got to raise. And it hasn't been healthy, and it's something we have to get away from, and I think you're seeing people get away from that. You're seeing more and more Christians getting married under, 21 years old or under. And you know what usually happens when they move towards marriage is there are usually older Christians in the church going, whoa, way too soon. You need to put that off. You need to experience life a little bit. You need to get through college. You need to do this. You need to do that. But look where that's gotten us. Look what that's done. Again, you're kind of throwing away the tradition of the last 80 years for the tradition of how it always was. Of marriage is good. If you can get married and you find another faithful Christian, go do it. We should encourage these things, and yet so many times it's from the church that discouragement comes. There is a shift going back away from that. You are seeing, I think, where they can, Christians skewing younger and younger towards marriage. And I think that's a healthy thing that we need to promote, get them ready for that, encourage that, and stand behind it. The place of children naturally follows as we continue on with the family. As I mentioned, Genesis, be fruitful and multiply. That's an important part of mankind's purpose here on earth. But when you're chasing experiences, or you're chasing toys, or you're chasing things like that, you put it off. Again, the usual dichotomy we've been talking about this whole time. Desire for large families hits 50-year high in America. Now, funny enough, they define large families as 3 or more children. Wasn't that long ago, 3 children was not a large family. Now it is, but there is a growing desire for more kids among a lot of people. It's still not that, you're not seeing a lot of 7, 8, 9, 10s, but you are seeing more kids. You're seeing families that want to do that. Even if they are the minority, they are a strong minority, they are a growing minority who view kids as good. On the other side, 1 in 5 adults don't want children, and they're deciding early in life. There are the ethical concerns that doctors have had to deal with of young people not married, even like coming out of high school saying, yeah, you know what, I would really like to get some kind of surgery to where I can't have children. Like, well, you don't have a spouse yet, you're not married, like you haven't, are you with somebody you can make that decision with? I mean, there's all the ethical concerns of that, but saying, I know I don't want kids, I'm just not going to do it, and so then I don't have to worry about it the rest of my life. It's crazy. But 1 in 5, and they're deciding early in life. And of course, you see the birth rate decline in America. Things aren't good. It's not a positive thing for a society to go through this, but you are seeing that shift away from it. Once again, it's in the church that you get that discouragement. It's from Christians. Well, you know what causes that? Oh boy, you guys need to find something to do. Don't you have a TV in your house? Why do you say things like that? Do we believe children are a blessing from the Lord? As Psalm 127 says, we should have a positive view of Christian. We believe be fruitful and multiply. We believe, now that doesn't mean every family needs to go out and have 15 kids, but it does mean kids are a good thing. Stop shaming Christian families who do it. And so as you see this generational shift of people going, you know what, stopping at 2, why? Let's keep going. Amen that, applaud that. That's a good thing that we're getting back to, because as you can see, the cultural trajectory a few generations down from when you limit it to just 2 or 3 at the most, you end up with people going, well, I don't want kids at all. It's not a healthy thing. In fact, if you tune into next week's Think Deeper podcast, I'll spoil it a little bit. We talk about the Pride Month and the sexual revolution slippery slope. I argue that that's where it started, is when families decided we don't need that many kids. Kids can be a nuisance. They're an inconvenience for my lifestyle. We're going to stop right here at a couple of them. Then you're defining the family by what makes me happy. You're defining your sexuality and your relationships by what makes me happy. Guess where that got us? And so, again, tune into next week's Think Deeper podcast for a little bit more on that. But as we kind of distill all this to the point I want to get at, there is a generational shift in a certainty on truth, or conviction, I guess I could say. For the longest time, there's this idea that ambiguity, that kind of not taking a position, that there's humility in that. That, I'm not going to force my views on anyone else, and, I'm not going to say I can speak for anybody else, but here's what I think, but there's a time and a place for that. On the other hand, there's a time to say right is right, wrong is wrong, and this is who I am, and this is what I think is right, and I'm going to live according to these terms, or this is what God says is right, when you can explicitly show it from the Word. But when you add on to that certainty on truth, that what our society has taken that to is you can't know anything. Who's to say on anything? And then we got to tolerance, but you notice tolerance really nobody talks about that anymore. That was a joke. That was a short-term trick that was played on us, and people bit and took the bait. It wasn't real, and we've got to get back to realizing nobody believes in tolerance. People believe one thing is right and another thing is right, and they're going to push for what they think is right, and it's okay if you do the same. It's okay if you think, I think this is the right way to go. I really think a man should be a man and a woman should be a woman. We should have a problem with a man wearing a dress or putting on makeup, and that's okay to have a problem with that. We should say children are a blessing. We should say some of the things that the Bible has to say and be okay with it. To that idea of kind of asking questions. I think there was a long time in the church, a lot of people talk about where asking questions was taboo. That was something that they got you ostracized and it was uncomfortable and they just didn't want questions. That's not good. We do need to be able to ask questions and have discussions and be patient with people. But if we can't give them an answer at the end of the question, if we can't explain, thus says the Lord, why are we here? Why do they need us? And once again, you give people a couple generations down the road, they go, yeah, I don't need you. These guys have answers over here. They're living out their answers, whether it's through the sexual revolution, whether it's through no families, whether it's through pursuing the lifestyle they want to pursue in so many different ways. It's no good. And so, yes, ask questions. Yes, leave room for discussion, but also have conviction, have a certainty on the truth. I'm going to bring in Chesterton here for a couple of things because he said some very useful things about this topic. The object of opening the mind, as of opening the mouth, is to shut it again on something solid. What happened to us in the last 70 or 80 years is the experts came in, the TV came in, the radio came in, all these books, Dr. Spock, and all the sociologists and anthropologists, and all these people had all these ideas that they shoved into people's heads, and it goes down to things like the nutrition and homesteading. Everybody used to have a garden. Nobody has a garden anymore because, well, here's a Walmart. It's all right there for you all the time, and Mom used to cook the best meals, but here's Taco Bell, and so that's just more convenient. Go through the drive-thru. Here's a bag of Doritos. It's no different. It's going to be fine. For convenience, for trusting the experts, for kind of, we were just told, kind of don't hold on to anything firmly. All the tradition you have, all those old things, don't worry about it. Well, now we're seeing the results, and that's where you're seeing these generational shifts of people going, no, I'm going back the other direction. I think we had it right before. I think this time of shaking everything loose and giving everything a try, we gave it a try. It's not looking too good. Let's go the other direction. And to Chesterton's point, continuing to just say, well, we need to have an open mind. Yeah, that was to see what was out there, to see what the options were. Now they're on the table. You would be foolish to not make a pick at this point. You would be foolish on matters of truth, and I'm not saying living in an apartment versus having a plot of land is a matter of truth, but some of these things we got to at the end, some of these more traditional religious readings of the scriptures, out of Genesis, out of the Psalms, out of things like that, out of Ephesians 5 of husbands and wives and submitting and gender roles and things like that, yeah, we're seeing the results, and it's time to close that mouth, close that open mind on something solid that we've seen the truth. Because the other thing, that another Chesterton quote I want to bring up that I think is so helpful in this, is the illustration of the fence or a gate. He said, there exists in such a case a certain institution or law, let us say, for the sake of simplicity, a fence or gate erected across a road. The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and says, I don't see the use of this, let us clear it away. To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, if you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then, when you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it. Honestly, that's brilliant. When we talk about tradition, when we talk about the old ways of doing things, whether it's socially as a culture or whether it's in the church, oh man, we all used to do this. We all used to not go out on Sundays. We all used to, mom and dad and their roles, we all used to have big families. All those things we used to do, and we just kind of accepted, yeah, we don't do that anymore. We're going to throw that out. Let's get rid of it. But Chesterton's point here of why did they have it in the first place? You don't need to know why you want to get rid of it. You need to know why they put it up. It might be there for a reason that you don't understand. And what we're seeing generationally is some of those things were in place for good reason. Some of those things, their reading of the Bible was way better than the modern reading of the Bible. Made a lot more sense, made a lot of people happier, made their life more joyful, made for a brighter Christian light in society. Now that we've seen the results, it's okay to look at it and say, you know what, actually we do need that gate. On the other hand, we can be overly traditional and not tear down any gates and just think everything has to stay, and you leave some things that you don't really need. You leave some traditions that don't have a lot of value, don't have a lot of worth to people. Yeah, it's important to evaluate those. Sometimes you're going to get the answer of why the gate was built and go, well, it was for a road that it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, we can tear this gate down. That's just fine. There's a time for each thing, and what we're seeing with some of these generational shifts is, rather than looking down on it and saying, well, everybody just tries to do something different, maybe there's a reason. Maybe looking back to the traditions of before, realizing maybe they had some things right that we didn't. There's kind of this thought that we are the smartest generation. Every generation thinks they're the smartest in history, I think one of the smartest things a generation can do is not repeat history, not be doomed to repeat it, as the proverb said, not the biblical proverb, but about the saying goes about failing to learn from history and being doomed to repeat it. Don't repeat tearing down gates that we really need, that are really helping society. And so the key points I really want to emphasize on these shifts generationally that are both cultural but also some biblical. Number one, it's a reevaluating of tradition. Sometimes we need to get rid of them. Sometimes they're there for a reason. Two, not trusting the experts, quote unquote. Boy, that's a term that got dragged through the mud the last few years, and for good reason. I mean, you've seen all the reasons why expertise has to be earned. Expertise is on the basis of truth, and in the same sense, they told you for years, eat your margarine, it's better than your butter. Well, now people are having heart attacks because of that. That wasn't a great idea. What you learn from that is, you know what? You need to look into things for yourself. You really can't trust people just blindly and say, well, they probably know better. Well, look it up. We've got the greatest research tools in the world. Learn to look into what you believe. Learn to look and ask, why are we tearing down this gate? Ask, why are we getting rid of things that we've always done? Grandma and granddad made lard biscuits and butter, and they lived to 97 years old. Why all of a sudden is this a problem? Don't just blindly trust, but again, ask, why are we tearing this gate down? And then the third thing that I think is a good thing that can go too far sometimes is being unashamed to go upstream. Unashamed to say, we're going to do things differently than it's been done in the past, or going back to where it was always done, but maybe differently than it's been done in the last 80 years. You're going to look a little weird, but that is one of these generational shifts is, yeah, I'm ready to stand out. Yeah, the world, it's falling apart all around me. If I'm weird to that world, okay, that's just fine. I think we need more people with, at the very least, the conviction. They might not be right in what they're saying on everything, but the conviction to say, you know what, this is not about what people think. This is not about pleasing some random internet audience of people. If they got a problem with it, okay, but I'm going to do what I think is right for my family, what I think is the best way to go, what I think God wants me to do on a given thing. I'm not worried about the criticism that's going to come. I'm not worried about the scorn that might be cast on me for saying, you know what, feminism's a bad idea, or some of these things that we've talked about. And so, as we look at these generational shifts, think about it. Think about each of them. Evaluate them for yourself. Evaluate, was the old tradition the right way to do it? Was the newer traditions that were brought in the last 70, 80, 100 years the right way to do it? Have that critical thinking that looks at what you do, whether as a family, as an individual, as a Christian, as a church, in all these ways, and get better at evaluating tradition. I think that more than anything is what I want to emphasize is holding onto tradition blindly is not good. Throwing out tradition blindly, not good. Ask why the fence was built, and you're going to get some good answers that show you maybe the right way to go. So that's this week's Cultural Breakdown. I've got a lot of great topics I'm excited to discuss in the coming weeks, Lord willing, but then you never know. A week might give me a hot topic to talk about, and so if you have one that you would like to see discussed, let me know. If there are any things you would add to this list, things that you see as generational shifts of people going to things that maybe their great-grandparents did and rejecting what their parents and grandparents did, and just different ways of living that are coming about, leave a comment. I would love to see the list expanded if you have anything to add on to it. It's a very interesting discussion for me. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it helps you to consider the way you live, but also the traditions, the doctrines, the ideas that you have taken on culturally and from your church and from all the places we get it, and learn how to evaluate it with that sense of, why is this fence here? Why was it built? And do we still need it, or is it time for it to go? And I think that'll really help us get to the bottom of tradition. As always, like and share it if you enjoyed it. If this is, again, if you have a comment to add to the list or a request, please leave it in the comments here on YouTube. Once I figure out this technology a little better, I think I'm going to try and double stream to YouTube and Facebook. I know I've got a lot of people on Facebook who might prefer to watch it there rather than YouTube. But I thank everybody who tuned in, and I will talk to you next week.